Welcome again to our podcast, Voices of Young Europeans. My name is Lexi, I'm 23 years old and I'm from Porto, Portugal, and today we'll be talking about the role of men in feminism. We are all raised in the system called patriarchy, and it affects everything about us and how we live with ourselves and others. The same can be said about other systems of oppression, be them racism, homophobia, transphobia, ableism, and others. Because of this, some people are privileged and other people are oppressed, but these overlap with each other. The idea of having these conversations came to me from the fact that I grew more and more aware about the importance of feminism and I wanted to do something about it. But what is the role of men in feminism? I Googled, I asked ChatGPT, I asked the women in my life, and I asked even other women that I didn't know, and I still feel like I'm not doing enough, and at the same time, sometimes I may be doing it wrong. Because of that, I invited Amy and I invited Tina, and I thank them for accepting my invitation to have this chat. Amy is from Hassl, she's the founder from Hassl, tackling harassment at the root. And then we have Tina from the campaign My Voice, My Choice, that is a European Citizens Initiative, but that since then grew a lot larger. So now, thank you very much. And I'd invite probably, let's go alphabetical order, Amy to introduce yourself, and then Tina, feel free to jump in as well.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. So as you said, I'm Amy. I'm the founder of Hassl, which is essentially a social enterprise that is all around tackling harassment at the root. It's a combination of essentially different tech tools and training, which is kind of a voice for women, but it's an invite for men. So everything kind of centers around men and male violence in what we are building. As I kind of felt like all the I want to say products, brands kind of around this put a lot of responsibility and more mental load onto women and girls and kind of perpetuate that narrative that it's our responsibility to keep ourselves safe and didn't really address the root causes, which male violence is predominantly the biggest one we're going after, but also poor public space design, barriers to reporting, and just systemic sexism, misogyny, like you said, from the patriarchy. So, yeah, that's a little summary. You want to go next?
Sure. I'm Tina. I'm 23 years old and I study sociology. But besides that, I work for the My Voice, My Choice campaign, which is a European citizens initiative that is trying to establish a financial mechanism for people to access abortion in the EU in a free way, an accessible way. I now that we've gathered all of the signatures that we needed, we kind of expanded, like we have a structure, a really strong community in the European Union, and we're trying to use our platform to also raise awareness about other issues. But one thing that I would like maybe to point out is during this campaign, connected with this conversation, during this campaign, we noticed that on our social media posts that spoke out to men specifically got a lot of likes, and also we have a cishet male colleague from the office, and whenever he would be in the on our social media appearing, everyone was obsessed with him. It got a lot of likes. So during this conversation, maybe I would like to also shed light on what. Sorry, there's a car honking. I don't know if you can hear it. Some of my reflections on what it means when it comes to such a large-scale campaign like My Voice, My Choice, tackling the entire European Union, how to adjust your language to cater to a lot of groups. That's from for now.
Okay, it's really great to have you. I've been following the ECI, the European Citizens Initiatives, for a while longer because I'm like an ambassador for it in the European level. Like this is in Portuguese, but basically it's a tool that people can get together from different member states and just say, we think this should be law. And so this campaign is part of it, and it's one of the most successful campaigns ever in achieving momentum in social media, in like events in even the member states physically. And so it's really great to see that it got to 1 million, and now I really hope the commission will like handle it properly and really bring to life what you are seeking. So one of the first questions I thought about bringing on, and you can take it by whatever order you prefer. It's like your perspective on feminism, because we know that for every feminism we ask what it means, it will be like two answers. So a lot of people say it has to be intersectional. A lot of people have to say that it has to be on the left. Other people say like, oh yeah, but trans people, and then they have perspectives that I myself don't agree with. I think Amy doesn't as well. Tina probably same. But so, what is feminism for you? And even you identify as feminist, but how did it start for you? Was it always that reality, or did you have problems before?
Do you want to go
Let's
first?
say,
Yeah, yeah.
I would say Tina to go first. Amy went first before. Like we can switch it up.
Okay. For me, when I saw this question, as I was preparing a little bit for the podcast, I, for me, it's a pretty simple answer. Like, feminism is a movement that strives to achieve equality among all genders. Period. Um, I think that this it's a very basic description, but it entails everything that should be said about feminism in the sense that it's not about a new hierarchy of gender. It's not about women taking over or whatever. It's about the fact that patriarchy is an extremely violent structure that not only harms women but everyone, like all of the genders, even men themselves. So when I talk about feminism, I talk about like liberation of all the genders. In addition to that, so I kind of like go from this basic definition, and then we can talk about the intersectionality of like feminism in combination with class, with race, with sexual orientation, etc., etc. So, but for me, all of these movements that tackle any kind of oppression go hand in hand, because you cannot have like liberation of women without liberation of workers, and so on and so on. So, yeah, this is my take on it.
Yeah, completely agree with every single thing you said. And yeah, I guess I'll try and build on it a bit, but I very much agree with what's already been said. I think by a basic definition, like it is just restoring balance and essentially creating equality. And I think, we were actually just talking about this before before we came on, but I think feminism as a word has had like quite a negative connotation for a very long time. I think whenever you are trying to combat or move towards equality in general, or combat kind of any social issue, anyone doing that, especially in the early days, can get painted with this kind of negative connotation or whatever, that you're radical or you're delusional or whatever it might be. And I think obviously we know historically that women who were feminist were very much, they had a hell of a lot of challenges that they had to overcome to get us to build the foundation that we can now build on. And obviously that differs in kind of within every culture and country. But I think like we were talking about, in like when I'm 28, and when I was younger, at school, like even like I would always say that I was feminist, like I knew I was, but even to say you were a feminist when I was at school, which I guess was like just over 10 years ago, was a very like dirty word and a very kind of negative connotation, or thinking that you're very radical in your viewpoint. And maybe that's just my personal experience being in the UK and whatever, but I think definitely, like we were talking about it, and I feel like the new wave of feminism, of kind of especially women that are in their teens now, are a lot more proud to be feminist and a lot more unapologetic in what they say and do. And I think it's amazing and it's very inspiring. And yeah, I think, again, like I think that's why a lot of men hesitate to call themselves feminists, because of that negative connotation. As much as, you know, I think it is also kind of frustrating because I don't really think we should have to say we're feminist. I think it should just be that everyone else is sexist. It shouldn't really have to be like this. It's kind of what we were talking about before, but like the word ally, like we have to use it sometimes because people kind of know what it means and it's a good way to frame something. But the term ally, when it comes to women or the LGBTQIA plus community, whatever it is, it makes me like wince, because it's just like, no, it's just, if you're not, then you're homophobic or you're sexist or whatever else. And it's like, this is just being a human and having empathy and having understanding for everyone, anyone who's different or the same. Like everyone, sorry, I've got my walking pad under my desk, it's like beeping. And yeah, like I think it's just, again, this is such deep rooted systems, historical things that we aren't just going to immediately break out of, but it is, even these words kind of perpetuate some of the stuff because we have to have these terms for it, whereas it should just be the norm and everything else should be the labeled things, if that makes sense. So yeah, that was a bit of a tangent, but yeah, I thought I think it is definitely changing, like the connotation. I think especially for women, it's a lot more okay to say that you're a feminist, especially amongst other women, and kind of feel proud of it and it's accepted and stuff. And again, I'm not saying for every society or culture, I'm just saying kind of, especially from my experience within, like from where I live and generally from what I see from a pretty like global Hassl community. But I think it is also, you know, with the rise of, you know, incel culture and online misogyny and all this kind of stuff, it is also becoming more divisive between men and women as well. So there's kind of that two sides of it, where I think it's becoming more okay for women to say it within, especially between themselves, but it's becoming more of a topic at which people who aren't there yet or don't understand feminism like to jump on and tear down. So yeah, there you go. Oh, and I do think it could be super intersectional as well, just to back that up. I think disproportionately like you said, all of these issues are so intertwined, we can't solve one without another. And I think disproportionately, and within every kind of oppressed group, disproportionately, say like women of color or trans women or whatever within the community of women, are disproportionately affected by like the violence against them, by I guess the patriarchy and all that kind of stuff. But it is about how it negatively impacts everyone. And I think that's one of the ways hopefully we can start to get through to more men, is that it also has a negative impact for them. All the things that you kind of see in the comments where it's like, oh, well, men aren't allowed to cry. It's like, yeah, that's because of the patriarchy. That's not because of feminism. So we're on the same side. We want the same thing.
It really upsets me that a lot of times, or most times actually, that men bring up these issues. Oh, men kill themselves more. Men are really sad and cannot express their emotions. It's only when women are talking about their problems.
Yeah.
Like, you do not see, I'm trying to create one now in Portugal, but you do not see communities of men that are trying to talk about their problems. And sometimes I see the comment, oh, International Women's Day. When is International Men's Day? It's in November. What do you want? Like, they don't even know. They don't
talk about it.
So I call myself a feminist, but I know that it's always a continued process of deconstruction, because I was a feminist at 14, and then was I wrong? Like I believed in it, but I still had so many problems inside of me that like made me problematic against women. And so I know that right now I also have work to do, but I still call myself a feminist in the sense that I believe that is the way to go, and I'm trying to do my part in it. But it's, as I said in the beginning, like, what can be the role of male feminists? And you were saying that for women, it's becoming more acceptable now to call themselves feminists, especially in women's circles. I don't face a lot of backlash in my circles even of
Yeah.
male circles, but that's because I curated them, right? I do not get along with sexists. But that's also a problem because I see a lot of advice which is call out your friends when they say shit. And like I'm not friends with those people. So like how can I
Yeah.
get to them? But I would like to know, like from you, what would you say is the minimum a man can do? But also what is the maximum? Like if I want to keep going more steps, what can I do for feminism and for also we can apply this to other systems of oppression, but I've heard a lot of advice like listen to women, and like that's what I'm doing this episode as well.
Yeah.
But other than that, like call out your racist uncle in terms of racism. But okay, what else can I do?
Should I go? I think there's a lot to this. I think firstly, education is a massive thing. I think you can't I think sometimes we run the risk of trying to be perfect and then not doing anything at all. And I think everyone is learning all the time. Like even, talking about this yesterday, and like even though I like to think that I'm very well educated, especially around women's issues, and I literally live and breathe it's what I do every single day, it's what I've built myself. There's things I discover every single day that's internalized misogyny, or that's things there, it's so inbuilt in us, and it is so like curated this way to be systemic and to be almost that we don't even realize we're doing it, or the things that we accept or whatever. And every single person is on a journey. No one's reached the end. Like you're always learning more. And that's around any topic, like not just feminism. I think you can I guess for me it's like more similar in terms of like race, for example. Like I'm white, and I think I definitely would not I would definitely like to think I'm not racist, and I do whatever I can to call it out if I see it, to educate myself, to sort of advocate for those who are disadvantaged because of it and all that kind of stuff. But there's always more you can learn, and there's always more you can do. And I think sometimes men especially might not do it out of the fear of trying and getting it wrong. And I think we do have to give everyone a little bit more grace generally, to not to excuse it, but to take it as an opportunity to educate people when they do. Like you said, if your intentions are true and you're like, I believe that women should be equal and I want to help them get there, it's going to be really hard to do that perfectly. Like when we don't live in a perfect world. And yeah, I think it's just it's better to try. I mean, educate yourself as much as possible, like read, listen to, like you said, listen to women, listen to as many different perspectives and insights on this, and especially from like an intersectional perspective. Like don't just listen to white rich women talking about it. Listen to as many different, kind of have a most intersectional approach you can. I think even, I know you were saying, Lexi, before about putting together reading lists of books specifically to help men learn more about feminism and to kind of understand it. And I think, that is a big thing. And yeah, just generally, like there is a lot of just very little things that you can do day to day. And, I think it goes a long way. As much as I want everyone to, come to protests and be a Hassl ambassador or whatever. And like, there is a lot of small things you can do in your day-to-day life, like making space for women, calling things out. Not even necessarily, like, I think when people say call things out, it feels like it has to be confrontational, and it doesn't. It's more like, if you can flip it, or just be like, what made you say that? Or why would you think that was okay to say? Or would you have said that to X or Y? Rather than being like, don't do that, and kind of coming at it from, people very quickly feel attacked. And you can almost kind of let people like unravel their own argument and realize that they're wrong all by themselves if you just ask the right questions. And I'm not saying that's easy, like it's definitely not an easy thing to do, but I think, especially when I was younger, I used to just get really angry if people were, racist or sexist or whatever. And
which is understandable. But
people will just switch off, and it's not a good way to educate people, as much as it is hard to it's hard to restrain yourself. And I think by asking questions and unpicking why they think the way they think, or trying to just, like, this is, and again, not to like push Hassl, but this is what we're trying to do, is kind of strip it back down to these really like flipping the narrative, being like, why do we say that to boys and we don't say that to girls? Or, you know, these kind of little things that actually is what everything's built on. Like, that is almost more powerful sometimes than going in and being like, well, 97% of women are harassed by men, so this is a massive problem. And people are like, yeah, but that's statistics, whatever. If you can actually like drill it back down, you know, or be like, would you say that to your, I don't know, your parent, like your mum, or would you say that, you know, it shouldn't be that you have to respect your family to respect women, but it is a way to kind of start to break down those barriers and kind of understand. Or yeah, I think, and it's same with like, I mean, we do like this bystander training, and I think a lot of people, when they see, for example, harassment happening in person, like there's this bystander effect where people don't intervene and stuff like that, and they kind of think intervening has to be confrontational, and it doesn't. Like, if anything, you want to do the opposite of that. And, you know, really simple questions like pretending you know the person who's being harassed, you know, making up a name and being like, oh, hi, I know Amy, like, what are you doing here? Or, you know, just pretending you know them can deter someone who's a perpetrator of harassment, because they immediately are like, oh, now this person isn't as vulnerable or whatever in that situation. You don't have to go up to harasser, start, you know, calling them out, because that will probably escalate the situation. I think that's what a lot of people are fearful of. But again, it's all this like education piece. It's just the more you can learn and understand about these quite simple ways to kind of, I guess, I think confront is the wrong word, but just to respond to when people are like saying things that might not be quite right. Or, you know, I think we even do it with our, like, we were talking about this the other day, but, you know, we do it sometimes to ourselves, like as women, we'll say judgmental things, internalized misogyny, whatever. And then it's like, would you say that about a man? Like, if you've, I don't know, for example, if your friend slept with someone and they're going, oh, I shouldn't have done that, like it's really slaggy or whatever. And then it's like, would you say that about a man? Would you? No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't give it, you wouldn't bat an eyelid if that happened. And then you start to realize your own internalized misogyny, essentially. And I think that's the thing. It's kind of, it's be more subtle to be more impactful.
I've been seeing a lot of videos of this as well. I've been seeing a lot of videos of like someone is recording and then like, oh yeah, are you talking to my sister? Oh yeah, how are you doing? And or just the opposite way. Like the women is like, oh hi love, how are you doing? And the guy's like, what the hell? Oh yeah, okay. And then they play pretend as well to help protect them. I've been seeing a lot of that, but at the same time, I see that maybe in these moments, a normal person, a normal guy would play along and be okay, but then in their day-to-day they are still like feminism, I don't know what that is, you know. So I would ask now, Tina, why do you think that most men are silent or would not call themselves feminists, but they still believe they are okay? They say, oh, I'm an okay dude, I'm not a sexist, I'm just not a feminist, because that's something else. Why do you think that that's so?
I think first I would like to maybe just when you said Lexi that like you kind of accumulate the people who aren't sexist, misogynistic in your life. Obviously, I also have a bubble of people who aren't sexist, who are active in different organizations, etc., etc. But I will say still that like even in this group there is this like the hints of misogyny, either if it's really explicit or like if it's internalized. But there are moments when someone I think it's like it's probably every week at least once, and then we have the space to call the person out. So I feel like if you have this even within your own bubble of people who are supposedly feminist, then obviously if we have this ingrained in us so much that we have to be called out on it and then fix it, and we are prepared to do the work to do that. But then you have these group of cishet men who aren't even at that stage one, like they don't detect the normalized sexism. It's like I wouldn't even say it's how do you say in English, like banal. It's sometimes it's commenting on women's bodies and saying, oh, it's just like that, I didn't mean to act on it, etc., etc. So I feel like this just stems from the fact that as a society, the prevalent kind of thought is that it is okay to talk about women, non-binary people, LGBT people, to comment on their bodies, to kind of yeah in the sense that mm, because no one in the sphere of, not even these men, the media also, and advertisement, I think everything in combination just reproduces the same system. So it's just like this banal sexism on top of banal sexism, etc., etc. That's why I think that most men don't um, like speak about these,
Yeah,
or even see themselves guilty of any kind of misogyny.
I think that's the thing. It's kind of seeing where you are. Like, I think you're completely right. It's seeing where you are on that scale first, and there's kind of like a different, don't want to say antidote, but like a different solution for wherever you are. Because I think like probably what we're talking about is maybe men that are already acknowledging there is some inequality, and maybe just like, for example, like you saying you, or maybe you a few years ago or whatever, but there is a lot of men, unfortunately, that, you know, like you said, still see themselves as good people, but they don't recognize, especially like, talk about this a lot, but especially when they're straight, white, older men that have money because they've never been part of an oppressed group or a part of a minority. So they've just never had to think about that. And when you've never ever had to think about it, it's quite a big barrier to overcome from an external perspective to get them to think about it. I think that's the thing. It's quite hard. Like, yeah, it's almost like if they've never experienced oppression in any form, I think why generally women can relate more, not always, absolutely not always, but like generally women have more empathy and can relate more to other oppressed groups is because they also know what it's like to be judged, to be
the feeling of oppression itself.
Yeah, whereas I think if you've just never been part of it, that's like a massive hurdle to get over, of that group of, like, unfortunately as well, like straight, white, rich, older men that also unfortunately tend to be the ones generally in power, in senior positions within organizations, all this kind of stuff. It is, you know, it's not an easy solution. And I think it is very much like, yeah, wherever you are on that scale, there's going to be different kind of solutions, or different ways for you to progress up that scale, if that makes sense. Towards,
yes, you notice you mentioned the scale at least twice, and I think a lot about it. Like, this is like the most sexist person possible, and this is the most feminist person possible, egalitarian. But like, where am I, and where are others? And I would say, I don't know. I don't know where to put myself or where to put others, but like I can compare people between themselves. And I was listening to a podcast yesterday. It's a podcast from two women in Portugal, and it's literally called a gender of conversation, like a type of conversation, but with the wordplay with gender. And they were interviewing one man, and they asked him, "Do you think women can trust men?" And it was like, I don't think so, because he was working, and I mean, he is working, at least still, as far as I know, in a place in Coimbra, in a Portuguese city. You can Google later. It's like Boa Ventura. And what he did is, like, there was this senior professor, and he was accused of harassment to multiple women in the institution, investigators. And then he started denying everything. And then when it was like undeniable, it was like, okay, it's their fault. And it was supposed to be one of the biggest allies they had there. And then you find everything was a lie. So how can women trust men in general? Like, how can you trust your husband, your boyfriends, your friends? And how can a woman in my life trust me? So I think that the way I can try to help men become safer and educate them, and also allow them to be trustable for women is to make sure they know so much about the problems that they cannot possibly be faking the empathy. So if they say, oh yes, everyone should be equal, I'm like, this could just as well be a lie. But if they know, like, if they read a full book on intersectionality and they can have debates about it, like, okay, maybe they can still be dangerous, but less than those. So it's like trying to progress in this scale. But I think the most important step is actually just calling yourself a feminist or even an ally, and like being able to go and read or check podcasts and videos, because I'm trying to build like artificial intelligence, with Google Notebook. Are you aware of that tool?
Yeah.
So basically, you can put a lot of PDFs and videos there. And my idea is I will put so many books from feminist authors. I've like from the list I have like 20 books already, and that's up to 50. So and then any man or women can go there and ask like, what are problems women face, or like, is this behavior for me problematic? And hopefully, like that's a big brain of feminist literature. We'll be able to give them responses. And because it's like anonymous, everyone is doing it on their own. There's no shame in doing that, so they can learn. But my biggest challenge now is like, how do I get the average man to go use it? Like, how do I make them care enough to learn? And I don't know if you have tested it. You probably have a lot of conversations about it.
I think like, sorry, do you want to go?
No, go.
No, I was just going to say, like, I think it is like it's really complex, and I think this is the thing, like, why one of the reasons I built Hassl was because I felt like there was a lot of amazing women's organizations out there and a lot of people doing a lot of incredible work, but it was all targeted towards women, and men were often left out of the conversation. And I understand why that has been, because it is so generally systemically quite difficult to engage men in the conversation. Also, obviously, women get it more, so it's easier for them to get support and all that kind of stuff. But I think because we were also coming at this from a systemic root cause thing rather than a kind of support group or something like that for kind of after the fact, I knew it had to, like, it's designed more around men than it is around women. And so this is, again, not trying to be like push Hassl, but I'm just saying, like, I think it is super complex, and that's why I wanted to build Hassl, because I was like, it has to, like, and our initiatives are focused at men at every single level on that scale, from, like you said, from perpetrator, like violent perpetrators, and how we can rebuild the system to ensure that the least repercussions come out of that, like trauma and stuff for women, but also all the way up to people who are like ready to be advocates and just don't have an avenue to like channel it. And I didn't really feel like there was much out there, or there was ones that were just targeted at men, which then meant you didn't have that like mass support that you need. So it was kind of like, that's why I designed what we're doing in the way that I did, because it was like, we need to have women first in there to like advocate, spread the word, push it towards maybe men in their life that are kind of teetering on the edge but not quite there yet, and then start to, like, as we talked about, we're now starting to migrate into way more like male focused content and start to really get up our percentages of male followers, ambassadors. We started doing men's focus groups and things like that. But yeah, it was always about bringing men into the conversation. But I do think, like, what you're saying, completely agree. Like, it's like, how do we get the normal man? But it's so complex to do that, which is why we've kind of gone at it like like, I've designed stuff so it's free to use, so there's no barrier for financial. It's put in front of them. It's like their boss paid for it and it's in their workplace. Like, they kind of have to do it. And it's like, if we can get them in the room, and then it's all designed to be very non-accusatory, to be very like flip the script, like all this kind of stuff. It's not don't assault women kind of vibe. Then it's like, it's like, I'm kind of like, okay, how do we, one, get them in that room in whatever capacity, whether that's physically or online or whatever. So it's like, you've got to remove as many barriers as possible to getting men into that room, right? Whether it's financial, whether it's their own doubt, whatever it is, right? And then the second thing is making sure when you get them in that room that it actually resonates and actually does have a chance at shifting mindset and changing the way they think and changing the way they approach situations and stuff. So it's kind of a twofold thing. So I think that's kind of the two things you have to think about. Obviously, they're very complex, but essentially it's like, how do you remove any barrier to them joining the conversation? And then the second thing is once you've got them in whatever capacity it is, whether it's within your literature, collection or whatever, it's like, how do you make sure that absolutely hits so hard that it was worth getting them in the room in the first place, if that makes sense. So yeah, sorry, I didn't want that to be like a Hassl promo, but I was just trying to explain
why it's designed. And Tina can promote my voice, my choice as well. So, so Tina, how do you think we can get him on board to learn?
I think I will be a little pessimistic or a bit more structural in my answer, in the sense of theory of how to tackle this. I love your idea. I love, like, whenever some issue rises up, that the internet floods with all these reading lists on how to be a better anti-racist or a part of the Black Lives Matter, or how to be a better ally to trans people, etc., etc. However, I do think that everything goes back to socialization. So these reading lists should be already incorporated at the basic level. So, like, in schools, the educational system should reflect the reality of how society is, not how it works currently, but how it is in the sense of there are about gender, about sexual orientation, about race, and so on and so on. I wanted to point this out because of my second point is, I feel like, I don't know how it is in Portugal and the UK, but I'm from Slovenia, and I noticed that in gay circles, so cisgender homosexual men, they tend to get very sexist. Like, they can be a part of many LGBT plus organizations, but still they are very hateful towards women. So I feel like, and also the same goes for, I don't know, for anti-fascists and so on, these groups of cis men. So I feel like no matter how many books you've read, no matter how much you know about the legacy of your own kind of marginalized group, I feel like that's not enough. It doesn't mean, because everything is entrenched in patriarchy and entrenched in sexism. So I really do feel that we can put a plaster on it and say, okay, you can read this and this book, but I really do think that it's high time to start thinking about going to the root of the problem, and, like, kind of revolutionizing the educational system, because I respect so much about what Amy was talking earlier, and how your organization works, in the sense that you try to educate people on how to have civil conversations with men, etc. But I would maybe like to point out that, as far as, I also, when I was 16, I was such an angry person. I was loud about everything. I was always fighting about sexism and stuff like that, and I had to adjust my rhetoric for me to be able to work where I work now, etc. And also realize that this is a tactic that works. However, I feel like, I don't know, I don't think badly, or that it's counterproductive that people react in aggressive or, like, angry way, because these are the things that we've been fighting for 200 years.
Absolutely.
Like, and these are the rights that aren't ensured, and that we have to fight for constantly. And if a marginalized group sees that it wasn't working when they were trying to have civil conversations, it wasn't working when they were just out there protesting, then maybe, I mean, actually not maybe, but like if they use all of the resources that they have, of course they're gonna turn to violence or aggression or
Yeah, no,
raising their voice in an angry manner. This I was just thinking about this, but I didn't say it before. But yeah, I don't think I answered your question, Lexi. But I'm hopeful about like this systemic educational revolution.
yeah, no, just to clarify, it was more of a way that men can speak to their friends. I definitely don't think that people should dial down their anger or anything like that. I just think, unfortunately, we know that people like me and Lexi were actually talking about this before, and I think generally, as much as I have the inner rage, absolutely, like it, you know, it is like everything inside me that I, you know, from being really young, and like my parents always raised me to think this way and stuff, and like I think, you know, I've hated any kind of discrimination against anyone. It's so, like you said, it's absolutely infuriating. And yeah, like, and I was just saying, like, I actually posted a TikTok yesterday because I was like, it infuriates me so much, not only how much people vote against other people's basic human rights, but how they actually vote against their own basic human rights and don't even realize it. It is so infuriating. And it's like, and again, it's like, all I want to do is just shake them and be like, do you not realize what you're doing? But unfortunately, due to educational inequality or lack of IQ or lack of critical thinking or whatever it is, they don't have the capacity, or the media or the government or whatever have manipulated them enough that they have pushed them down this path. And it's sometimes, especially if you're talking to friends, I think it's very different, like in different environments. But I think especially if it's white, you know, white straight men talking to their friends and trying to talk, the easiest way to make these approaches is to not come at it as a anger, you know, like in an angry approach, because people will just switch off and like get defensive. I think absolutely definitely be angry about it. And yeah, I would never say, especially to anyone who's marginalized or oppressed, to not, yeah, everyone's been quiet for way too long, and like you said, nothing really actually ever changes. Like, people like, why do people protest and why do people do these violent things? And it's like, because no one listened all the time that we were quiet, or we just asked politely or whatever. And it's taken, like you said, revolution essentially to actually make proper change. So yeah, I think it's like different, but that's just kind of one-to-one conversations. I think especially if it's someone you know and someone you maybe think you could get through to, if you kind of could tell them, unpick why they think the way they think and kind of reframe it for them so they can better understand, is just a potential way that maybe men can get through to their friends without feeling like they're gonna have a whole argument or fight or whatever their, you know, repercussions they might be afraid of. So yeah.
But I think I really understand what Tina said, because I scroll a lot on social media and my algorithm is kind of radicalizing me. And like, it's a really, really true sentence or statement that good things don't come easy. Like, if we study history and we see like how most civil rights were conquered for most people and marginalized groups, it was not like asking politely. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
but especially in the United States, the end of slavery, like, it's not easy, right? And that now the system is telling you, oh, if you want equal rights, maybe you should like vote, you know. And obviously that's an important part of it, but it's not just that, and it's, you have all the right to be mad. And obviously sometimes it has to be channeled one way, other times it should be channeled another way. But I put the small ticker like on the bottom saying like, are you in your female rage era yet? Like, I am, and I'm not even a female, so it's like, it's so upsetting. But
Yeah.
the part about revolutionizing our educational system, I think that's essential. And the books that kids read and do what start in schools. And in Portugal, we even have the Education for Citizenship class. And they did the bold move of teaching sexual education. And like, they were basically doing the minimum, like, you know, like, you should use protection and consent is important. But then they said, queer people exist. And the far right in Portugal and the conservatives lost their minds, and they said this was like indoctrination by the state, and their children, like one kid in one school, like in all of Portugal, started skipping classes because like we don't know if it's the kid or the parents that wanted it, but also if the
Yeah.
kid wants it, it's because the parents like put it in his head that he doesn't want to go to that class. And then the school failed him. He could not pass to the next year because that was mandatory. And the kids put the state and the school in court, and like it's a big fight because they were teaching like queer people exist. And then they go and bring the curriculum, and they said, oh, you see, in the official curriculum, it's saying like people should be able to love whoever they want. This is so outrageous. And then they go on social media and the movement picks up.
Yeah.
So we need to have enough democratic pressure from the moderate people and from the feminist people, men and women, that we like wherever whoever party is in government, hopefully not the far right, but whoever party like center right, center left, whoever is there, they will feel the pressure. We cannot do certain stuff, and we must do certain stuff, or else we'll simply lose the vote next time.
Yeah.
But for that, and that's why I think we need men, because they are the other half of the population. I mean, we are the other half of the population. So, like, for the votes, it will matter. And for the pressure on the government, it will matter. So, another question I've told you that I have is, should men organize, especially feminist men should organize, and how? Because should we join feminist groups like I'm join Hassl, I'm an Hassl ambassador, or should like we have our own male groups to have like that type of conversation where it's less likely what we say may upset and hurt other people? Because there are feminist groups in Portugal, like E for She, it's a global movement, and we have our own local in Lisbon, in Porto, in universities. But I asked some people in E4She Lisbon, and a girl told me, a young woman told me, actually, we have like 5 or 6 men, and they are all queer. So, like, the straight white
Mm.
men, like, where are they, like, cisgender? What are they doing? And why do they not join? And so these are the questions I'm trying to fight now, and trying to bring people that I know, that I think they are reasonable and they are decent, like, hey, sorry, why are you not calling yourself a feminist? Why are you not putting on the fight? And I got about 60 people in about 2 3 weeks. So 60 is not a lot, but also my social network is not huge, right? I think if we could get more prominent men that are also speaking about this and create a community, this could be something. But then I'm afraid, am I a man with a bad idea? Like, will this backfire? Because Amy was telling me earlier that a man, for example, in London, proposed that they should have women-only carriages in the trains or in the subways, and that would be a bad idea. So, is this idea of mine a bad idea? Should we have men organized by themselves, or should it always be together with women?
I'm mm, I'm not sure how cis-het men can organize without the referent. So if their reference is feminism, and if their reference is closing the gap between, the inequality of the genders, then obviously it needs to not be men only, since the fact that when men are oppressed, obviously that's horrible and all that stuff, but it also reflects then violently on all the other genders, like because
Yeah.
of toxic masculinity everyone suffers, yes, men as especially, but you can't unravel that without engaging the other people who you are actively harming. So I feel like it should be more of, it shouldn't be men only. Honestly, that kind of scares me. It should be always in connection, and I think the starting point is maybe listening, like to listen to what other people are saying, and also teaching yourself how to, when someone talks to you in a calm way, how to also not react defensively. This is something that also I had to learn, um, to kind of engage in civil conversation. And then when you're at that starting point, you can, I guess, or no, I think it goes hand in hand. And you could also talk about your experience as a cisgender man who is dealing with social, societal norms, etc., etc. But talk about your experience. Don't talk about um, how unfair it is that feminism, but like you know what I mean. It's I feel like when you're engaging in that conversation, then talk about your experience, and maybe you will be enlightened as to why you are struggling with the fact that, I don't know, you as a cisgender man can't wear makeup.
Yeah,
It was a bit, I hope that was clear. I told it a bit confusing.
no,
I got you.
yeah, I agree.
Amy?
I think,
Yeah, feel free.
no, I was just going to say, like, I think again with, and I agree with what you said. I think when you, at the end of the day, as a white cis man, you do not have lived experience as a woman, right? You just don't. That's something we're never going to get past. Like, it's never going to be, you're never going to be on par in the sense of like how your day-to-day life is directly impacted by this, because we know women disproportionately, when we're talking about patriarchy and feminism, we know women are disproportionately affected, and especially when we're talking about the kind of issues that we like focus on, like violence against women, you know, and same with like abortion, obviously, and stuff like that. Like, men can advocate for it, but they're never going to have the same lived experience of what that is like, because that is just how the world is, right? And I think it's the same for anything. I think being part of an organization that, like, I do think, and as I kind of talked about before, I do think there are unfortunately a lot of, for good reason as well, so I don't mean it in like a shaming way, but like a lot of women's organizations that do exclude men, right, from, they don't want them involved. And I've even had it with Hassl, like women being like, I don't want to be part of this if men are part of it and stuff like that. And I get it. Like, there's a lot of women who are extremely traumatized that maybe have never had a positive male figure in their life at all. Like, I understand, unfortunately, it is that common, and I get how people are disillusioned and stuff like that. My personal perspective is that we're never going to get to a significant solution for violence against women if we don't involve men. That is my personal stance, and that is the approach that I'm taking with Hassl. But I do think, you know, again, like I think it's very important that men are part of the conversation, as long as their intentions are good and true. And obviously that's something we like safeguard and everything very carefully, but we're also not a support group or anything like that. We are, you know, a group of volunteers developing initiatives essentially. But I do think it is important that, like with any of these things, that women are overseeing what is happening, because they have the lived experience. They can direct, like you said, I think a room in the nicest way of just men fighting for women's issues with no women involved is quite a scary thought, which maybe sounds horrible, but I think that I agree. Like, it's quite a daunting thing. And I think even like, you know, Lexi, you were saying, kind of saying, oh, I don't know where I stand. Like, to me, I would say, from everything that I have learned and seen, and even our own stats and everything, I would say you're in the top 5% of men in terms of how you think about this issue, right? I'm on about violence against women. Like, that's from everything that we've learned and from everyone that's involved. I would say it's about 5% of men who are ready to advocate, you know, are in a position where they're like, tell me what I need to do. I'm here, like, I'm ready. And hopefully that's going to improve. But the thought of being like, let's round up men to like help, you know, to kind of do this without women involved, because it is so like nuanced in what we experience. And again, I think it's the same for any oppressed group. I think, you know, the thought of a group of white people just going, we're going to solve racism, and like just go and do it without speaking, like, that is, to me, that is, you know, like, I just wouldn't even dream of it. Like, as someone who I like to think is pretty well educated, and I think that's the same for you, you like to think you're pretty well educated on this topic, and I agree, like, I think you are, but you've not, I don't have the lived experience of people who have experienced racism. Like, I don't, like, I do not know the nuances of every single thing that they go through every single day, no matter how much I read, no matter how much I speak to them. I've never lived it. I've never lived being so disadvantaged at every opportunity because of my race. I just haven't. So I think it's about finding those groups that are inviting men into the conversation, because there is groups out there. And I think it's about being part of those. And I think within those groups, you can definitely, you know, like we're doing men's specific focus groups, because we just want to sit, but it's guided overall with our overarching mission that is predominantly, you know, it is still predominantly women, and like I still want to change that. I still want to increase the amount of men that are involved, but at the end of the day, it is a female team at the kind of the forefront of what we're doing. And I think it again can kind of come, and again, I don't mean this in disrespect, but it can kind of turn into this performative thing again, where it's like, I'm a feminist and I want to do stuff for women's rights, and kind of bypass the whole how to actually do it because I'm not really involving women in the solution, if that makes sense. And I don't necessarily think that's coming from a malicious place. I think it's just, a lot of the time, I've met many a liberal feminist man, and after very few conversations realized they literally have, they don't really have any insight into what what's like
in the beginning. I know I still have a lot to improve. So this question about if it should be open to women or men only, or it could be men only, it's a very consequential question. Like, I will, after hearing both of you, I've heard both perspectives. Like, my girlfriend said, oh, maybe it's okay to have a place with just men as long like you somehow involve women. Like, I ask them stuff, and then sometimes other men ask other women. And even like, I was trying to be as intersectional as possible. So I had the trans women, I'd also ask questions. But after hearing both of you, and also some of the other perspectives that say that's kind of scary, like, it's not that you are saying it's like, it can be a bit bad. No, you're saying it's scary. I don't want it to be scary. So I will open the group to women, Portuguese in this case, because it's the language. But I will do that, and I will see how it goes, how it works. And then when we have another focus group in Hassl with the men, I will let you know how the update goes. But like, it's very important. That's like, when I say that I'm trying to listen to women, this is kind of it. I think it's important for men to have this space to talk about the masculinities and everything, but I don't have a strong stance that it has to be only men. Some ideas I had were like a women check. So like, if we are going to do something on social media, or if we are going to make a proposal, we would check with women and also other oppressed groups. But I also had another idea, which is like the observing sisters. So like, women can come in if they want, and they can be part of the conversations and even guide conversations. So like, probably the observing sisters will be like the way to go. And they can be part of the group. So just know that like, not only you are being heard, you are like shaping that. So thank you very much.
I don't think it's bad to have like men's only groups around these things. I just think it could, unless you've got proportionately very, very educated men within the group, you could quite quickly go derail, because you don't have kind of people pushing back and like sharing real lived experiences, if that makes sense. I don't think it's, I've purposely said for the men's focus group, like, women have tried to join, and I've said, no, we do other focus groups, we do, joint ones. This is for people who identify as a man, because I want a space where they can talk to us, but like, we're still like overseeing. Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously you've been part of it. Like, I'm still in there. I'm talking. If there is, we've had really good conversations so far, but just if it does derail at all, there is like people to kind of, bring it back and make sure that it's feeding into a bigger thing. I think if it's just a standalone men's group fighting for women, that could quite quickly go down a route that isn't, and as I say, like that man that we were talking about, like, I didn't mean that he was being horrible or anything, but when he was on a panel talking about women's safety and he goes, let's have women's only carriages on the train, I was like, hun, like, no. Like, this is, again, because they were just perpetuating that thing of like, that was the solution. And I'm like, you have a chance, you are part of the UK rail group, you have a chance to make systemic change, rather than put more responsibility on women to go in these carriages and whatever. And like, it was just kind of, I think it can so easily be well-intentioned, but just go down the wrong roads when there's not diversity within conversation, if that makes sense.
I just wanted to point out one more. I wanted to point out one more thing. I don't know. I feel like this could be. I want to generalize experience of being a feminine presenting person, but I've talked to my female friends about how, when we go to different events, in the sense that there are some like round tables, etc., on issues, it can be anti-militarism, but also on the issue of feminism. It happened that we came there and when it was time for questions, we were just overthinking about what we were going to say. So we rather didn't say anything at all. And at the event of feminism talking about abortion, there were predominantly cisgender men talking. So I feel like also um, when you have the reality of raising cis boys in a certain way, so they kind of get more platforms to speak up, then also at these kind of events or organizations, they're just gonna behave the way that they were taught to behave. So even I feel like if you decide whichever way you decide, I feel like it's important to also kind of moderate the conversation that everyone in this situation has, so that you make sure that then the marginalized groups are not left out of the conversation because someone was raised to talk confidently.
Yes, I discovered that part of being a man and being a woman as well, like what they told me about the experience. When a friend told me, "Hey, like it is lovely being with you. I always like being with you, but let's just do it in the afternoon because I have a dinner later, and I would invite you, but it's a girls' dinner." And I was like, "Yeah, that's okay, but like, what is special about girls' dinner? Like, is it different than common gender like everyone?" And she was like, "Yes, like we actually get to talk." And I was like, "Oh." And then also some topics that like they would not feel comfortable with men, but actually just like in any topic have their voice heard. So I started reflecting from that day, and I was like, damn. But we are over 1 hour now. I don't know how long you have left, but there's just one final question, and if you have to rush it, feel free. My last question is if there is a need for new male role models, countering, for example, the Andrew Tates of life, and how would that be, especially concerning this exact fear of stealing the spotlight. So men are always talking, and now if it's going to be about feminism or being a better man, like is it dangerous or is it counterproductive that men are taking space in doing this? And how do you see it?
I think that mm, so maybe I'm reflecting on how our campaign went, in the sense that our communication team, how they decided to what content to put out, what work, etc., etc. I feel like the when you have cisgender men who are already exposed to the public, so they are famous people, celebrities, that the audience or people, the public kind of takes them in and transforms them into a symbol of something. So there is already happening that you have these cisgender men who are kind of breaking societal norms about how to dress, in the sense that I don't know, some actors are starting to wear makeup or have their nails painted and so on and so on. So I feel like then when you have these celebrities who already have a platform, it's important that they or I don't know. I feel like I would say that they're responsible with what they do with their platform, so that they are in favor. They talk about the right to abortion. They talk about same-sex marriage, etc., etc. So I feel like that already exists. The need already exists because the public is already doing that, and also combining this with just some practical experience that I saw when I said at the beginning how many likes these posts got, like what I don't know, Timothy Chalamet said or what Harry Styles said or whatever. It got much more likes than any other cisgender female celebrity that said something. So I feel like the public is already taking the space to create and um, expose famous people who have how would I say, who have the correct opinions on stuff, especially feminism.
I would say I think generally, I mean, again, I feel like it's really hard to not talk about Hassl when I'm answering this, but my plan with Hassl was always that we would start with very female-centered content or women-focused content, and over time we would gather those, you know, ambassadors and advocates and all that kind of stuff, which we've done now, and then we'd start to, you know, still keep up with all the girlhood, womanhood, relatable scenarios, but start to bring in a lot more like what it means to be a man, all that kind of stuff, but in a very, you know, I don't want to say a subtle way, but we're not like going, oh, here's a list of things you should do kind of thing. It's more like a, again, relatable stuff, and starting to bring in maybe the men who are teetering on the edge of being involved start to feel more that there's content for them to share and that kind of thing. And also we've always talked about that we're going to focus more on male influencers when we start to work with influencers, which is happening now, or happening very soon. But because it's a bit different, because what we're doing is essentially building a brand around men, it's a bit different than the general feminist movement, if that makes sense, because I'm trying to tackle a specific problem of violence against women, which is predominantly caused by men. So I am trying to tackle male violence at the end of the day. So I'm trying to create positive male role models, like you said, to counteract Andrew Tate and co, and kind of use all of their tactics. I don't really want to call them that because, you know, pain, but use all of, you know, the way that they kind of give young boys aspirational things, but that we do it in the same way, but that has a positive outcome for the world and for women especially, you know, where we are, what's the word, like, I don't want to say glamorizing, but like, you know, creating this like what it means to be a man, and it's all about like having empathy, having emotional intelligence, like all this kind of stuff that is kind of like anti-patriarchy and speaks to men but has a knock-on positive effect for women, because at the end of the day I'm trying to make the world safer for women, and I think we're not going to do that by perpetuating the same messaging, obviously, that like toxic masculinity and incel culture and all that kind of stuff, you know, goes on about. So I think for feminism in general, I think it should always be women at the forefront. I think it's, again, like it's kind of that lived experience thing. I think because what we're doing specifically is more anti-patriarchy, and it's about tackling violence against women, which the majority of violence against women is perpetrated by men. It means that to get to a solution, or to do the solution that we are trying to do, is to tackle male violence. And I don't think we're going to be able to do that without creating positive male role models, alternative routes to the likes of Andrew Tate or whoever else. And to kind of say, like, especially when boys are young and they're in that kind of stage where they're trying to like find out who they are, and they're like going through puberty and they don't know, they're insecure and all that kind of stuff. And it's like being that alternative path that can take them on not only a positive route for them, but a positive route for the world. Do you know what I mean? So I do think it's kind of two different like sides of it, because as I say, I think like what we're doing, whilst it is rooted in intersectional feminism, it is about tackling male violence at the end of the day when it comes down to it. So I do think we have to, as much as possible, have more of a balance of men and women, whereas I think generally in feminism, like with any movement like that, I think it should be those who suffer the most that are at the forefront of, you know,
of course,
what you're trying to achieve, kind of thing. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we've reached the end of our questions. I would say that both of you can have final remarks if you'd like if there's one thing that the people that listen to the episode this far should listen to, what would you say it is?
As in like I would say
what is the message you want them to take in their heart?
I think if you have the right intention, don't try to be perfect, just try to learn. Like don't hesitate from progressing within feminism by the fear of not being perfect, because it's better to do something, you know, as long as you're not harming anyone in the process. It's better to educate yourself and try and do something and just like we've said, listen to especially the women around you and understand and hear. Don't just listen, but like properly listen. And then just do do whatever is within your capacity to do and start yourself on that journey. Because I think as you go, then you get that momentum. I think it's the fear of like starting that means people never delve into helping those that are oppressed or marginalized or whatever. So yeah.
All right. The way I see it is start without being perfect, but be completely open to listen because you know you are not perfect, right?
Yes.
So if people give you feedback, don't take it as an attack. Even if someone is attacking you, try to see like, okay, this person like was severely affected by what I said or did, but like what can I learn from it so I don't make the same mistake again?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. And Tina, do you have final remarks you'd like to share?
Maybe I would like to address people who know, like, who aren't complete assholes and sexists, but like have a hunch that some like a certain comment is inappropriate and so on and so on. I feel like we should strive to be better in our own circles. So call your friends out, don't enable them. Also, you can just, I have a few friends who have really shitty friend groups in the sense that there's like all these cishet men commenting on women, and he tries to kind of talk to them in this jokey way, but in the sense that he's still calling them out. So I feel like it is everyone's responsibility if your closest people do something that is wrong in any way, that you call that out and have a conversation with them. Maybe go as far as like changing your friend groups, but I feel like it's constructive that you at least try to call your own people out when they say something. In addition to what Amy already said, that listen, just listen and learn. And yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much both for coming in and helping us understand more about the role of men in feminism and also what we can all learn from each other. It was great for me personally. Like the idea to learn came before the idea to do the episode, and I'm happy with what I learned. So I'm sure that everybody that listened will learn from it. And also the reason I asked now for these final remarks is because maybe, and we know like not everyone is going to listen to like 1 full hour and 15 minutes of podcast, but I will eventually share like the full recording with you, and we can all like take our screenshots and small clips and use them in Hassl, in my personal page, Eurodesk, my voice, my choice, in any way you prefer. Like the material is as much as is yours as is mine and Eurodesk. So we can try to do like with this material, with this conversation, the most amount of good that we can. So thank you very much for coming. And Tina, I will keep in contact in Portugal with Umar. So know that I'm in good hands and I'm being responsible. I will keep trying my best, as Amy said, like not knowing I'm not perfect. So I hope we can keep making the world a better place for everyone, but especially women and other people that are suffering from the world we were created on. So thank you. I will stop the recording now.
Thank you.